I've got a movie pitch for you guys. It's about this stuffy conservative town in the 50s that has this school. And the school is all one gender, and they go a really traditional route. And then one year, this teacher comes in, and they're teaching, arts or something like that. And they get super individualistic, and are like, express yourselves to the students. And the students start going off the beaten path, and the administration hates it. Okay, you've all read the title, you know what's happening. It's Mona Lisa's Smile, not Dead Poets Society.
But to say that Mona Lisa's Smile rips off Dead Poets Society is like saying Lara Croft Tomb Raider rips off Indiana Jones. It's
superficial at best. And we could talk at length about Dead Poets Society and its brilliant encapsulation of how toxic patriarchal norms affect not only women, but men. But, people actually know Dead Poets Society. It's a critically acclaimed, Oscar-winning film that gets parodied and tributed all over the place, and Mona Lisa's Smile doesn't.
Our free-spirited teacher this time is Katherine Watson, played by Julia Roberts. And this is an actress I honestly don't think is right for these kind of period roles. Her speech patterns and behavior are just so modern, and you'd think it wouldn't be a problem when she's playing the most modern role in the movie, but it puts her at odds with the rest of the cast.
Kirsten Dunst, Julia Stiles, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and Ginnifer Goodwin all give these wonderfully nuanced, distinct performances that really makes me feel and care for their characters. Unlike the Dead Poets Society boys, who I could not name if you put a gun to my head. I'm not even sorry.
The story of Mona Lisa's Smile is more mature, given that its characters are older and dealing with different problems than the Welton boys, not only because of their gender, but because they are at a different point in the development of their lives.
The future feels a lot more looming when you're a senior in college. And next thing you know, you've graduated, and you're living in your parents' house while you work a terrible minimum wage job, and you're going on auditions to try and get out of there, and you're looking for apartments, and you just want it to end, and I got sidetracked. Moving on.
Lawrence Connor and Mark Rosenthal took quite a few liberties with Wellesley College, which is a real school, presumably to better illustrate the differences between the teacher and the administration, and to make things simpler for the audience to understand. And on the one hand, I get that, but
I never know how to feel about men making work that's supposed to be from a female perspective. And that's generally because, they don't get it. This one bothers me a little less because it's set in the 50s and is therefore permanently dated, but it's still pretty shallow on a textual level. The only thing that's elevating it is the performances of the cast.
After Julia Roberts, Kirsten Dunst is the highest billed actress, and her character undergoes the biggest change of the four students. She plays Elizabeth Warren, called Betty.
Elizabeth Warren! Oh, I'm gonna have fun with you.
Betty has fully drunk the Kool-Aid on the whole MRS over BA thing, and is the most antagonistic of Catherine for her progressive thinking. She gets married early in the school year, and as the year goes on, she comes to realize that not only is married life kind of unfulfilling due to her husband cheating on her, but appearances matter more to her mother than her well-being. And it's kind of heartbreaking. After having a breakdown in front of her friends, Betty ends up divorcing her trash husband, telling her mother off, and enrolling in law school, where she will eventually start claiming Cherokee heritage and become a senator for Massachusetts, determined to piss off conservatives like she used to be, and a couple liberals too.
That is good low-hanging fruit.
Betty's best friend is Joan Brandwin, played by Julia Stiles, and once you get past the somewhat stilted accent that she uses half the time, she has the saddest plotline. Catherine takes Joan under her wing more than the other girls, encouraging her to apply to law school despite Joan's plans to marry and settle into homemaking. Joan gets into Yale Law and initially insists that she can do both, but then decides she's fine with being just a housewife.
She gets this big speech about how it's what she chooses and what she wants, and that's technically feminist too, and I would agree with her except for the fact that she gave up on having both, presumably because her fiancé gave her an ultimatum. Also, there's this terrible line.
She'll be in Philadelphia. With me. Well, that's an awful long commute to get dinner on the table at 5 o'clock.
But if he would have supported her as she claims, why did she have to put it aside at all? I mean, is it because she's feeling the pressure of a patriarchal society telling her that marriage and babies is the most she should hope for and the most satisfying thing she could do? I mean, yes, being a mother and a wife is a lot of hard work and it's admirable, and anybody who's a stay-at-home mom, good for you, but you drank the Kool-Aid, Joan. You bought it. You sold out just a little bit. Admit it. Cop to it.
All that being said, I do admire the movie for its attempts to show that there are indeed many ways to be a feminist, and that marriage isn't the patriarchal yoke of slavery some make it out to be, and that it's just as bad to try and enforce your own views of how a woman should act while claiming that you're liberating them.
People can't change if they don't want to. It's honestly that simple.
This is best exemplified through Maggie Gyllenhaal's character, Giselle Levy. Giselle is a vivacious serial dater with a taste for older, often unavailable, and inappropriate men. She slept with the Italian professor and is later dating a married psychiatrist, and is sexually active to the point of owning contraceptives, something that shocks her friends. Giselle admires Catherine more vocally than the others, and perhaps because of her sexually liberated ways, gives more of the vibe I think they wanted for Catherine.
Though, of course, revealing that her parents are divorced and her father has a second family just screams that the screenwriters wanted to say she has daddy issues. There are other reasons to be into older men, you know.
In fact, Giselle seems like a missed opportunity for more queer representation in the film. Because of her confidence in her sexuality, she comes off as different from most of the other girls, and there are more than a few lines and scenes that seem to imply she likes herself a few ladies too, particularly the baby of the group, Connie Baker, played by Ginnifer Goodwin.
Let's just say if they were men in ancient Greece, they would have been banging on the hour, and 1,000 years later, people would have been calling them cousins.
This would have also given her a level of parallel with Amanda Armstrong, the school nurse who provided her with the diaphragm in the first place, because, well, Amanda is...
She's a lesbian. A lesbian who had a partner that died right before the events of the movie, and because it's a conservative college town in the 50s, nobody ever actually says the word, but...
She's a lesbian!
That's something Dead Poets Society has over this movie. It's bittersweet, but poignant. In Mona Lisa's Smile, none of the main characters actually lose. 2 of the 4 girls are paired off with boys at the end of the film, and the other 2 are headed off to New York to live together as seemingly platonic roommates. It would have been much more meaningful to build on Giselle's character by having her flirtatious ways be to cover up her bisexuality and her feelings for Connie.
And let me check. Oh my god, that's barely anything. Okay, class, new assignment. You have to go write me all the sapphic Mona Lisa Smile fanfiction, and while you're doing that, I'll discuss our last student.
Connie is fuzzy as a character, kind of undefined and underwritten. I'm not sure if she was supposed to be on a scholarship or from New Money, but Betty treats her as decidedly lower status than the rest of their friends. After being set up with Betty's cousin Charlie for Betty's wedding, Connie falls in love with him, and Betty just has to go and be a killjoy and tell her Charlie's engaged to someone else and Connie's just a fling.
Everyone keeps telling her to lay off Connie, but nevertheless, she persists. I'm not even sorry, your hatred only gives me strength.
Connie and Charlie do eventually clear the air and get back together at the end of the movie, and I'll be charitable and say that she's self-actualizing by defying social norms and getting together with him, mostly because I don't want to pick on Ginnifer Goodwin and her baby face and her Disney princess eyes.
She's just too cute to mock. I'm not a monster. But back to how this falls flat where Dead Poets Society met the challenge.
There's very little connection between Catherine and her students for most of the film. Where Mr. Keating formed a rapport with his students and became their confidant as he talked with them, Catherine tends to talk at her students. And there's very little to show the actual impact and influence she's having on them until the last third of the film, in what is probably the very best scene of the movie.
She's smiling. Is she happy?
The important thing is not to tell anyone.
She looks happy. So what does it matter?
I genuinely have nothing snarky to say here. It's really well done. It's poignant and melancholic and evocative, especially after everything that's happened to Betty for the last year. It's the second best performance Kirsten Dunst gives in this whole movie. The first is this.
It must be torturous running after a man who doesn't even care about you, who's in love with someone else, who hates you. He hates you, Betty, and it hurts! Ah, get off of me! Get quiet! Get off of me!
If the rest of the movie were as good as these two scenes, I'd have a lot less to complain about.
It's a great encapsulation of the sheer amount of pressure these kinds of expectations and rigid norms can put on people. Is it as heartbreaking as what happens around the same point in Dead Poets Society? No, but it still strikes a chord, arguably because it's more familiar. You probably know someone who has had a breakdown like this, or you have been that person yourself.
The ending of the film also has what I like to call Lord of the Rings syndrome. As in too many endings.
The more derivative Dead Poets Society style ending involves all the girls using paint-by-numbers Van Gogh kits to show their individual spirits and styles, and even if it's not as inspirational as Oh Captain, My Captain, it gets the point of the movie's themes very well. But then we have to have the wrap-up graduation scene so that Betty can get away from her terrible mother and hear the one old-timey slur in the movie, and then this really unnecessary voiceover monologue from Betty about what a super special snowflake teacher Catherine was while all the girls bike alongside her car. Oh, give me a break.
The next film that director Mike Newell did after this one was the fourth Harry Potter movie. Which, makes you think maybe he shouldn't do movies that are set at a school and take place over the course of a year. And since these two he hasn't, praise be unto the movie gods.
Pacing a movie is a hard thing to do, especially if you're going to be covering a full year like this one does. Betty's character development is the perfect example of this, oscillating between a slow burn and bricks to the face.
And I'm sure those pacing issues were very helpful in preparing her for the stop-and-go nature of Congress, but now it's time to actually address Catherine properly. I hate this character!
I know it's not fair to compare anybody to the late, great Robin Williams, but man does Catherine Watson fall short when she's compared to John Keating. She's preachy rather than inspirational, domineering rather than comforting, and just so sanctimonious.
Oh my god, this is what everybody thinks feminists are like, isn't it? I'm so sorry, Internet!
There's just no warmth to her performance, even in moments of vulnerability. I don't believe that she's built a connection with her students, I don't believe any of the sentimental drivel that comprises Betty's final speech, and I don't think she actually grew or changed that much.
I mean, for God's sake, her big epiphany line is delivered not by her, but by her useless boyfriend, the Italian teacher who used to sleep with his students. Also, what the hell, dude? I know they're probably all over 18, but seriously, not cool!
My point is that Mona Lisa's smile is juggling way too many balls. If it had just been about the 4 students and we only saw Catherine from their eyes, it might have worked. But by trying to make her the protagonist, the perspectives clash and the message lost its sincerity, becoming just another sappy coming-of-age drama with a forgettable message.
But with all that said, I hope people do watch this movie because when it's focused, it sparkles. You know what? Hang on a sec. We're gonna take a little field trip.
Maybe this movie needed the fat trimmed. Maybe it needed to pick just one of the girls and stay with her, to let it solely be her story. It probably would have been Betty, but it could have just as easily been about Joan or Giselle, or even Connie with a little more depth added. Maybe it needed to be solely about gender roles, and use the art as a metaphor for that rather than splitting it equally. Or maybe the filmmakers just needed to spend a little more time doing their research.
This is Wellesley College. It's one of about 60 women's colleges left in the United States and is one of the original 7 sisters, the female counterparts to Ivy League schools like Harvard, Dartmouth, and Yale. While most of the filming for this movie took place at Columbia University and Wheaton College, Wellesley did allow some exterior shooting to happen on campus.
Both Wellesley alumni and current students at the time objected to the portrayal of their school. The campus was not as unilaterally white as depicted. Their modern art classes had actually been well established by 1953, and while students did marry immediately after and during their 4 years at Wellesley, it was most definitely not
a finishing school disguised as a college.
And I'm sure you're wondering right now, really? You literally had to take us all the way out to Wellesley College to tell us all this? And yes, I did. Because this is a real place with real stories worth telling, not fictions that are invented to copy somebody else.
Dead Poets Society came from a place of truth. Screenwriter Tom Schulman based the script off his own experiences at a private school. Mona Lisa Smile tried to do the same thing, but there was no truth within the script. When it succeeds, it's on the merit of the actresses.
With one glaring exception, Julia.
Ironically, it sums up its own problem pretty succinctly with the Van Gogh lecture. This movie took Dead Poets Society's concept and tried to recreate it without understanding what made it so special. They put it in a box, and they tried to copy it.
Pretty ironic that you make a film about looking past the image and individuality and wind up with something boring and sappy and dull. Hollywood, I expect to see a remake in 20 years, I expect it to be good, and if I see so much as one hair of Julia Roberts, I am failing you. Class dismissed.
Merci beaucoup for watching, everyone. If you like what I do, please be sure to like, leave comments, and share this video, and to subscribe to help my channel reach a wider audience, as well as following me on Facebook and Twitter. If you're feeling generous and you aren't paying off exorbitant student loans, you can support me on Patreon to get early access to my videos, request future episodes, and be considered for cameos. Encore merci, and I will see you next time when we will be heading down to New York City to meet Brooklyn's finest. Au revoir!
Oh my god, this is what people think all feminists are like. Internet, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll never feminist again. Actually, that's a lie. I'm gonna keep feministing.